How's everyone today? Good. So sorry to keep you waiting. I was dealing with something with LeMay. And just want to get my order signing pen out here. Okay, reliable people and reliable power. That is Manitoba. So I have an order here to bring back 500 megawatts of power that we're currently exporting to the United States of America. And I have an order here to dedicate 50 of those megawatts of power to stand up a new transmission line to Nunavut. Now you're all supposed to applaud, like we see on TV. So everyone's been watching what's happening across the country and thinking a lot about Canadian sovereignty. Manitoba has a wealth of Manitoba hydroelectric resources, and we should use them as a province to light up the north, to light up Western Canada, and to help us build trade corridors. We're looking for opportunities to make our economy stronger, right across the true north, strong and free. And I want Manitoba to be a leader, just like you, in that project of building up Canadian sovereignty. So over the past number of months, we've been working with Manitoba Hydro to assess the needs here in the province and also to talk about how we're going to build up the future of our economy. And so I want to say, first and foremost, we are a reliable partner when it comes to electricity. So to our partners in the States, we are going to continue to export hydroelectricity for many decades into the future. You can count on us. When we say the power is coming, the power travels down the transmission line, and when we say we are going to keep our word, we do exactly that. It's not just smart business, it's who we are as Manitobans. And yet, as we've been looking at our power needs, we saw that there's 500 megs of export contracts that are expiring at the end of the month. And so we've decided, as Canadians and as Manitobans, we are going to use that power to build up our own economy here at home. So in Manitoba, that means more housing, more factories. But it also gives us the opportunity to talk about trade corridors and building up our Canadian economy across provincial and territorial boundaries. So the first project that we're committing to, and we're showing that we're serious, bringing a tangible commitment to standing up one of these trade corridors, is one that will go north to Nunavut. The Nukik project being brought forward for the Kivalliq region of Nunavut is great for the environment because it displaces diesel generators. It's great for Manitoba because it allows us to find a new export market for our hydroelectricity. And it's great for Canada because it brings on board more housing, more mining, and more industrial opportunities in both Manitoba and in one of the northern territories. Then, when we look west, when we look at our other provincial neighbors, and we think about the prospect of building trade corridors in Western Canada or across the country, in whichever direction, we know that those trade corridors are going to need power. So with that remaining 450 megawatts of power, we have the ability to say we in Manitoba are serious about talking with our western neighbors, with our northern neighbors, with all other jurisdictions in Canada. And not only are we serious and stepping up to talk, we're putting action behind those words. And we're saying we're bringing back some of this power to our country so that we can build up the next generation of Canadian infrastructure. And so this is something we've been working on for quite a long time, and we know that Manitobans are going to be excited about this possibility. Now, instead of just being that province that is the host to transmission infrastructure or to a trade corridor, Manitoba is going to be a leader. And that's how we build up good jobs for the next generation. That's how we protect Canadian sovereignty. And by enhancing our presence in the north and across the Arctic, we can ensure that we're defending Canada's interests today, tomorrow, and for generations into the future. So, again, when we talk about lighting up the north, when we talk about lighting up the west, and doing so with clean, reliable electric power from Manitoba, it's not just smart business, it's also about standing up for Canadian sovereignty. And so I'm very, very proud to say the next generation of reliable Manitoba hydro exports is going to go towards building up our Canadian economy and protecting our Canadian sovereignty.
What is the financial implication to hydro of not exporting these 500 megawatts?
So this is factored into the GRA that Manitoba Hydro has applied to the pub for approval on.
So what is it's factored in, but do you know what the financial implication of not exporting those 500 megawatts?
Yeah, absolutely. There are going to be a number of changes that we see in the coming years, all of which have been contemplated by Manitoba Hydro in their general rate application. And we hope that the independent regulator, the Public Utilities Board, takes a close look and ultimately decides whether or not to approve it. Given the past PUB oversight of hydro, I'm confident they will approve.
500 megawatt contract that's expiring.
There's, just for clarity, just a small technical thing, it's 2 contracts that are expiring on the same date, and they total 500 megs.
And are they both to the U.S.?
Yes.
And was there interest in renewing them, or were they just...
We're saying our interest is what we're putting first here, the interest in building up the Manitoba and Canadian economy.
So was there an interest on the other side of renewing the contract, and you said no?
Baseload power is the most valuable thing in the world right now. Baseload power, meaning power that's not depending on the wind blowing or the sun shining, but electricity that flows 24/7. It's the most valuable thing in the world right now because of AI. Every time you fire up a filter or search something on Google or ChatGPT, it's a huge draw on baseload power. And the reality is we could probably continue to increase our exports to the United States of America for the foreseeable future. Everyone's telling us that the price is going to be bid up. But we think that the same economics around baseload power are just as strong in Canada. And we're making a strategic priority here to invest in Canadian uses for this hydroelectricity. So the first 50 megs that we're going to outline a clear use case for is to have a transmission line and trade corridor going north to Nunavut. But with that other 450 megs, there's a lot of talk about trade corridors going east or west. For us, west would probably make a lot of sense. And us being able to come forward and say, you know what, there's been a lot of great talk, but Manitoba's serious. We're willing to develop and dedicate our energy resources towards this, I think is one way that we can help this nation-building moment that everyone's feeling across Canada right now.
Who specifically were the 2 contracts with? And again, the question was there interest on the part of the other parties in renewing them, or did these just become available anyway?
Oh, no, I think, yeah, like I said, we could have continued to renew these, but we've made the decision to focus on Manitoba's needs first. The contracts were with Northern States Power, aka XL.
Was it Minnesota, Michigan?
Minnesota.
It was all Minnesota, both contracts were?
Yeah, and we're going to continue to export power to Minnesota. We're going to continue to export power to Wisconsin and to the other Midwestern states. But while we're going to say continue to export 2,000 gigawatt hours of power per year, we're also going to say that this 500 megs is going to be set aside for domestic purposes. The first priority we can point to is a line to Nunavut by 2032. And then we're also willing to say, hey, if folks are serious about building a trade corridor towards the west or to other parts of Canada, we've got 450 megs of power that we're ready to bring to the table to build up our country and to protect our sovereignty.
Who's putting up the billions to go up through Nunavut?
Well, for us, we're hoping to make money off of this project, as this would be an export contract. And we've definitely talked to the feds, and we've talked to the Kivalliq region, as well as to the Nunavut government. The Premier of Nunavut and some of their cabinet will be here on Wednesday to sign off on this deal. So we hope the feds come to the table with the resources necessary to build this nation-building project that crosses provincial and territorial lines.
Given, forgive me for stepping on you there, but given,
No, it's all good.
Given that this will be some time then before this northern line happens, and there has been a shortage of capacity.
Like what happens to the power in between kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a shortage of capacity here. By canceling, I mean, in simpler terms, by not sending this power south, this extends the time before we hit this winter capacity crunch that was predicted by 2030. I mean, would you not agree that that is the de facto result of this decision?
Not totally clear on de facto's use in that context, but generally I agree with what you're saying. But what I would point out is this. The Affordable Energy Plan that we committed to and announced publicly and that Hydro is building their IRP on contemplates another 1,000 megawatts being added to the grid. It's like 600 megs of wind, 200 from demand-side management, 200 from retrofitting older turbines and things like that. Then there's the thermal generating plant that you've reported on, right? So when we look at that 1,000 megawatts plus this 500 that we're bringing home, rematriating, you can choose whatever term of art you want to use there, we've got 1,500 megs. So when you look at the near-term demand that Manitoba is going to have, we have within that 1,500 megs enough to power the new housing, the new manufacturing facilities, maybe even some exciting new clean energy opportunities, while still being able to say we can commit 50 megs to Nunavut so that we can build a trade corridor going north. And we could also, at the early stage of talking about a trade corridor to other parts of the province, say that something in the ballpark of 450 to 500 megs would be available for that purpose.
Has this been communicated in advance to the Democratic governor of Minnesota?
I spoke with Governor Walz. I don't have the date at the tip of my tongue, but it was a couple months ago, and yes, I did communicate this to him. He understood, and the fact that we're a reliable partner today and tomorrow, that we're going to continue our relationship with the MISO market, I think was valued by him. And the fact is, we are going to be in the business of exporting electricity to the Midwestern U.S., including Minnesota, forever. We're going to be there for the coming decades. But given what's happening in Canada right now and the pride and patriotism and focus on building up our Canadian economy, we decided, you know what, Manitoba has an opportunity to lead the conversation. Instead of just waiting for that trade corridor project to fall into our lap or the next application to come across our desk, we said, well, why don't we get the ball rolling and say that we're serious about devoting the electric energy resources that are needed to build up our economy here. Governor Walz, to his credit, he accepted it in that kind of folksy, good-natured fashion that some of us who've been watching his political career have come to know. And we've committed to continuing to work together as neighbors. So we're still going to be good partners and reliable partners for our American export market. But the reality is we're also going to step up to a new level of engagement in terms of leading the energy conversation in Canada. And part of that means helping to decarbonize the north in Nunavut, but hopefully we can also talk about decarbonizing and exporting energy to the west as well as other parts of Canada.
So Premier, would this be like Bipole 4 to the north? I mean, you said hopefully the feds would step up with resources, but how do you see this coming to
Yeah, no, I mean, we're going to be a power seller, right? We are an energy superpower that's just on the cusp of attaining that superpower status as Manitobans. But we want to be in the business of selling our power, and at a moment of Canadian pride, Canadian sovereignty, who better to sell our electricity to than to other Canadians? Nunavut has a shovel-ready, practically, idea here in the form of the Kivalliq line, the Nukik transmission project. So can we put a transmission line there? Can we attach broadband to it? Can we connect that to Churchill along the way and open up opportunities here in Manitoba? I think we can. Given what you've heard from the leaders in the federal campaign right now, I think there's an appetite to approve a big energy and trade project that crosses provincial and territorial borders. We're saying Nunavut looks like a good idea, but we're also saying we have enough electricity as Manitobans. We're going to free up from these firm export contracts to be able to show up at that table with some of our Western neighbors if they're willing to step up on one of these trade corridor ideas that people have been talking about for so long.
Is there a business case for selling power to a region of some 11,000 people that will require hundreds of kilometers of line?
It is, and it comes from the mining industry. You have some mines online, which are huge consumers of power, and that's being served by diesel right now. So not only could we displace that and provide them a cost advantage, but we'd also provide the climate advantage too of this being low carbon electricity. And then there are other mines, which are just in the development stage, concept stage right now, which if there was a transmission line into the region, this would make those projects viable, and boom, now all of a sudden we're supporting economic development in the north as well as in Manitoba. So when you think through the different options here, this really is a nation-building project that we could be embarking on here. The thing Manitoba can do right now is say, you know what, we're serious enough to say, here's 50 megs for the northern transmission line to Nunavut. Let's get the other parties to the table. The territorial government will be here on Wednesday, hopefully after the federal election. The federal government will be there as well too. And in the same, stroke of the pen, we're also saying there's another 450 megs. So I know there's a lot of Western Canadian premiers who'll probably be pretty fired up to hear that Manitoba is interested in the conversation about trade corridors.
Mr. Premier, you described Manitoba's energy superpower, but as that hydro general rate application states very clearly on pages 24 to 27.
Oh, so you haven't read the whole thing, Bart? I'm disappointed. You're not at page like 975 yet?
On page 24 to 27, they talk about how
I'm just teasing you.
I know, it's fine. Bipoles 1 and 2 are decades past their intended life. They're 20% of their capacity of the equipment along the way is gone and not reparable. A lot of hydro's infrastructure, the infrastructure tab, as you know, that and the new generating capacity is $31 billion.
Yes.
You describe it as a superpower, but like the superpower is kind of like full of kryptonite for a long time. Don't you? How concerned are you that this, former jewel of Manitoba's economy really needs a lot of money put in to make it continue to work?
Yeah, you got to spend money to make money. So this energy superpower that is Manitoba might look like Clark Kent right now, but trust me, it's a superhero. And when we bring back this power from the export contracts, when we commit to our neighbors that we're willing to show up and do a deal on trade corridors, you're going to see us emerge with that cape around our neck, standing up for the true north, strong and free. And tortured metaphors aside, I would say that the $31 billion investment that we have is already baked into Hydro's long-term plans over the next few decades. And that's going to bring a ton of people in hard hats and steel toes to work in our province. And if we announce on top of that, we got a trade corridor going north, maybe another trade corridor on the horizon, that's going to attract that many more people in hard hats and steel toes to our province to go to work. It's steps like this, it's having a vision as a province, as the people of Manitoba. This is what you've invested in hydro in over the years for, is to put us into a position like now where we can cash in on those investments we've made over the past 5 decades. And when you do that, that's how you turn our province from a have-not province to a have province. This is how you turn our province into one that hosts tradespeople and economic activity the same way that Alberta and BC do. And so that's the future that I want for Manitoba. And if we can do that in a way that does right by the environment, that defends Canadian sovereignty, I think it's a real winner of an approach.
What specific mines would be served by this line in Manitoba?
Okay, now we're in the pop quiz section of the exam. I believe it's the Agnico Eagle mine, and you'll have to forgive me on the ones that are in the development and near-term horizon phase.
What's the advantage, or is there an advantage to having Nunavut come here Wednesday, signing this agreement before the federal election? Because you said, depending on what happens with the election.
Well, we're serious. We want to hit the ground running. I think the leading candidates in the federal election have made clear they're looking for nation-building projects, and I don't want Manitoba to be at the back of the line. And so with the Nunavut line being ready to hit the ground running right away, with a potential trade corridor involving our Western or other Canadian neighbors being that much closer to reality, if we signal we're serious about powering such a trade corridor, it means Manitoba is going to get on the ground floor. There is an opportunity right now. There's a window of opportunity that's open for our province, and I want Manitobans to be able to look through that window at a prosperous future. And so us getting ready, again, there's going to be tons of negotiation and deal making that needs to take place here. We got to worry about all the financials and the environmental and make sure that all the communities are on side. But the reality is, what can a government do? We can say we're serious. Manitoba Hydro is a massive shift. as a massive ship, rather. And we are slowly reorienting in a very responsible, judicious way that ship towards this clean energy future that builds Manitoba up into superpower status.
And does this change affect Manitoba's hydro's ability to buy power from the U.S. during winter peak periods?
No. We're still completely a reliable partner of the MISO market. We're going to be exporting. Again, if you look at the megawatt, attached to each export contract, we're still going to have something like 1,300 megs of export contracts after these OICs take effect. After these orders take effect, we're still going to be exporting something like 1,300 megs. That works out to about 2,000 gigawatt hours on the average year. It's going to the U.S. We've still got these seasonal diversity exchanges with those Midwestern partners where we're exporting during the summer, we're importing during the winter. All of that stays as it is. We're a reliable partner, and in fact, I'd hope that our trust from our American partners as being a reliable province and a reliable exporter of electricity is increased by this, because we're being very transparent and we're saying, here is our long-term plan. It's to still be a reliable, trusted partner for you, even as we start to make some investment decisions here at home in Canada. And so when the Americans look at Manitoba, reliable people, reliable power, that's who we are as a province, and that's the type of people you want to do business with.
Premier, what do you say to people who think of kiosk and Bipole 3 and the wall report and, building a new transmission line and concerns about hydro's debt and the long-term cost of that and, with the environmental concerns and drought, what happens if, the 4 falls out from hydro and we have a prolonged drought? And I don't know, what do you say to people who are nervous about this kind of adventure?
Well, if you wanted to pay off your mortgage and have folks in Nunavut pay for it, would that sound like a good deal to you? If you wanted our Western neighbors to pay off your mortgage, would that be a good deal? I think if you can structure something that's a win-win, where they're paying our mortgage and we're turning the lights on in their backyard, that's a win-win, and we have the opportunity to do so. When it comes to the environment, that's why we're looking at the wind farms and partnering with Indigenous nations to stand those up. It helps to diversify the power supply. And again, a lot of folks talk about energy transition, but we also need to be thinking about energy addition, which is just we need to add more power to the grid in every way that we can that's consistent with our values as Manitobans.
So is Wab back on the table?
Well, I love the folks at Hydro, and I'm sure if you ask them, what do you think of Katy Perry landing from space? What do you think of the Jets winning the President's Trophy? What do you think of the Premier's press conference today? I'm sure their answer is going to be to build a new dam to all those questions. For me, though, let's do one thing at a time, and I'm saying transmission line to the north, transmission line to the west, to other parts of Canada. Sounds like a nation-building project Manitobans can really benefit from. And so we have the power that we're now going to bring back to our own Canadian purposes here, and we're going to put pen to paper to also signal our serious intent to other parts of Canada to use that.
To Carol's question, though, we're already more indebted than comparable utilities in other parts of Canada. Having other people pay off your mortgage sounds like a great idea. Depends on how much of a second mortgage you're taking out to build the required infrastructure.
Yeah.
How will this affect Hydro's debt, which has already come under scrutiny from credit rating agencies?
I think there's a strong likelihood we'll be able to see an increase in revenue without adding anything else on the liability side. Again, for this to work for Manitoba Hydro and for Manitoba, we're not going to be building the transmission line. We're going to be hosting the construction activity. That's what we'd like to see. And that's why we want to have the feds at the table, right? Is to have them see this as a nation-building project that they would invest in through whatever mechanism they deem appropriate. But for Manitobans, we're saying, what can we bring to the table to move these conversations on forward? Well, we've got the power. So let's say we're willing to dedicate 50 megs to this. We got another 450 megs that we just freed up for planning purposes. If another trade corridor comes across our desk, we could talk about devoting it to that purpose. And at the end of the day, I want us to be able to build new infrastructure in the province and have other people pay for it.
So you want the feds to
and us to own it.
You want the plans to pay the whole bill of the new.
Well, now we're getting into the subject of negotiations. Yeah.
At the same time, you have this massive generating capacity and deferred infrastructure maintenance bill, $31 billion.
But we have the plan to pay for the 31 billion already. That's in the GRA.
The GRA clearly states it might not be enough, though. It really states that.
We gave them an extra 200 million, more than 200 million annually for them to put into retained earnings so that our debt to equity situation is manageable. And that was in budget 2025.
Tangentially, speaking of other trades with other jurisdictions, when are you meeting with the EU head submission?
Later today and tomorrow. So we've got the EU ambassadors here, Germany, Spain, Estonia, and wouldn't you know it, there's a Manitoba snowstorm to welcome them. Thank you, Mother Nature, for letting our EU visitors get a real taste of what it's like during a Winnipeg whiteout the day after we clinched the President's Trophy.
On the Lemay Forest, you said you were just dealing with that. Is the province, have they reached a deal, or do they?
Are we all good on hydro?
We'll finish more on the EU, then I'm interested in what Steve's saying, so it's
All of the above?
All of the above.
All of the above. We could circle back to other topics this time.
What kind of clean energy partnerships are you being talked about with the EU?
So I think this initiative that we're talking about here today is going to be very interesting to the European Union. For us to say that we're standing up a trade corridor to the north and to the Arctic is going to be very exciting for our EU visitors because the Port of Churchill can reach this massive port in Rotterdam, Germany, more quickly than a ship could from Thunder Bay. And so for them to come here and to say we're really leaning into diversifying our exports, we're really leaning into our status as a clean energy jurisdiction, and that we're going to play nice with our neighbors, both provinces and territories, to get that done. I think that's going to be the table setting for some great conversations with our guests from Europe. And when you're talking about ag, you're talking about manufacturers here in Manitoba who are dealing with this tariff conflict on two fronts. Well, all of a sudden, those markets in countries like Germany and Spain and Estonia, our other guests from the EU, those are jurisdictions that we really need to lean in on.
Are you talking about hydrogen, LNG, or crude through Hudson Bay to Europe?
I'm not talking about that today, but what I am talking about is a renewed interest in the north, in our northern port. We've been showing up with money each and every year, along with the feds, to build up the rail line, to build up the port. Now we're saying we're serious about putting an HVDC line and broadband into the region as well. So for us to have that geographic advantage of being able to get to Germany more quickly, hopefully this starts to bring on board other investment. And again, the hydrogen industry sounds so exciting. It's not there yet, but maybe it will be. We're talking about a timeline between now and 2032. Maybe there will be hydrogen that we could export in the form of ammonia by then. And if we're talking about other trade corridors, we're saying we're serious about starting the conversation.
All the talk of Churchill has, folks in Alberta have said that Churchill is too small and that it will require ice-hardened ships for the feds to pay for, and there's the plan to build some.
That would sound great, actually, to me. If you get us a polar-class icebreaker to have in Churchill year-round, sky's the limit in terms of what Canada can do as an exporter to the EU, to Brazil, to other jurisdictions.
Those cost $1 billion alone.
They cost like $7 or $8 billion. So yeah, the feds, again, if we're going to be powering this project of building up Canada, the feds can show up and make the infrastructure investments. There's some regulatory stuff they can do to help Churchill as well, too, to extend the shipping season. But if they want to park an icebreaker there, if they want to help make that transmission line financially viable, these are the steps we can take to build up Canada. And Manitoba is ready to be a leader. We're leading the way by saying we're putting pen to paper to bring real resources to the table, and we're extending that warm and hearty handshake to our neighbors and to the federal government to get something done here.
Where are the EU ambassadors?
Where are they right now? I don't know.
Are you going to Churchill with them, or what's the plan?
I won't be going to Churchill with them. They are meeting with AGG, the Arctic Gateway Group folks during their visit. They're meeting with a bunch of great Manitoba companies and individuals and institutions. We'll be having a reception for them that'll be attended by ourselves. That will also have Indigenous leaders present. A real kind of good foot forward in terms of building that relationship with the EU. We'll also have some business meetings, and then of course they have some, I guess, one-on-one time with companies and other folks that they're interested in here in Manitoba. But I think it's just such a great time for us to host these guests from the EU. Everyone's been shocked, I would say, by how things have gone with our closest neighbor to the south. And while America will always be that great ally, closest ally, strengthening the relationships with the EU and other countries around the world that share a lot of interest with us is super important.
Yeah, Steve's question about LeMay, is there a deal?
So I want the chainsaws to stop, and to that end, the province of Manitoba is going to expropriate LeMay Forest and turn it into a provincial park.
And under under what legal mechanism are you going to engage in that expropriation? Is there an order? Is this a
there's a bunch of paperwork that's going to happen, but I'm communicating this publicly now just so that people hear the message, and hopefully there's no trees getting cut down and people are just reassured that we're going to turn this area into a provincial park.
How much does it cost, ballpark, to expropriate? Are you buying all of the land from these developers?
Well, I think there's been a good faith attempt to buy the land from the developer here, and the offer, from what I understand, was way more than what the developer paid for this area. So there's a public interest here. We think that public interest is probably best served by making it a provincial park. And so while reasonable steps have been attempted and have not borne the result that I think serves the public interest, we're now going to move ahead with expropriation.
Why do you think it needs to be a provincial park? I mean, it's an old forest, there's some history there.
Yeah.
There's trees, but most of what we hear is people who live in the area want trees in a forest to go to, and not every forest has to be a provincial park.
That's right. In this context, though, when we look at the reasonable efforts that have been made, the offer to purchase that was, I think, way above what the developer paid for it, expropriation is the step that makes sense here. We have exhausted other avenues. We've looked at the Heritage Act, Cemeteries Act, Conservation and Environment Acts here, and each step of the way we've either been rebuffed or been advised that we're not going to be successful. And so given the public interest here, given the concerns about cemeteries, we're taking the step to expropriate here. And I hope that us announcing this initiative is going to be enough to just calm the waters and allow what should be now a negotiation and a fairly boring process, if you will, to be carried out. There's been a lot of talk about this having a role in Indigenous history. I went down the LeMay rabbit hole. I don't actually think there is a definitive link to prove that that we know there are Indigenous folks here. But we do know this is a cemetery. And so it should be dealt with the respect that would be accorded to anyone's cemetery in Manitoba. And so that's why the province is taking this step. There are conservation interests. There are these historic cemetery interests. There's the public interest in the end. And we have exhausted a bunch of other potential remedies, and this is the one that we're arriving at now to serve the public interest.
Fair market value or whatever the assessment
Expropriation powers that the province has contemplates a fair market value, but the question is, what is the fair market value? And so now we'll go through the process of arriving at that. And for me, the public interest at the end of the day is to put the chainsaws down, to put the folks who are really fired up about this at ease, and to just let Manitobans know, instead of some kind of showdown or some kind of conflict, instead you're going to have a beautiful provincial park that everyone can enjoy.
And what would you say to the notion, I've heard this come out of City Hall, that the developer in question has been hoping for this particular eventuality and has been engaging in actions that would require the city or provincial expropriation, and has been, this is not my words, but playing governance. What would you say to that idea?
I'm sure everything I say in the scrum will be used in the expropriation process that is now going to play out. And what I would say is that when I was first elected premier, I had a stack of letters like this on my desk of people who are like, hey, you're Indigenous. I have a piece of land with a tenuous claim to indigeneity on it. Do you want to buy it from me? And this was amidst that stack, and I just kind of, put it off to the side. We're doing this because of the public interest. We're doing this because Manitobans are concerned about burials. Manitobans are concerned about a woodpecker. Manitobans are concerned about a forest. And Manitobans are concerned about having access to public space. And so that public interest looms very, very large. And we are stepping in because all the other tools that we've tried to use here, pulled out of the toolbox, none of them were quite the right fit. Is it a Phillips head? Is it a torque head? It turns out it's an expropriation head.
Campground, yurts.
Well, hey, it's probably a good joke to end on if you want to leave it there.
RV park.
Sounds like you'd have to knock down some trees to do that, though. I don't know if we can.
On a more serious note, I just have to ask, given what happened to Governor Shapiro's home over the weekend, I realize we have a different political context up here, but it's not common to see the head of a state or a province have something like this happen. What, if anything, do you think about this? What, if anything, do you have to do with your own personal security in light of incidents like that?
Yeah, my thoughts are with Governor Shapiro, who's a great guy. We met virtually over the past couple months to discuss the tariff situation and about strengthening the relationship between Pennsylvania and Manitoba. We make a ton of nickel here that gets shipped down to Pennsylvania and forged into steel and then gets sold back on both sides of the border. So Manitobans and Pennsylvanians both benefit from that. We did a little workup showing how the tariffs would make the Philly cheesesteak more expensive because of all the goods that go back and forth across the border. So we've had a good rapport, a good back and forth. Governor Shapiro is a great guy. I know he's a dedicated family man, 4 kids, I believe, married. And it makes me really sad that Governor Shapiro and his family were put at risk in this way. I hope that there's accountability and justice, and I hope that everyone who serves in the public sphere is able to do that important work safely and with respect. There's always ways to disagree, but I find that you demean yourself when you go beyond the bounds of polite democratic engagement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just one question to follow up to LeMay Forest. MMF has been very outspoken saying that they believe there was an orphanage, an MMF orphanage there back in the day leading to cemeteries. If this is pushed forward, how much of part of the project are they going to be, and have you had any conversations with President Chartrand regarding?
We haven't had any conversations on this specific topic. I know they're very interested in it. So other than like some very, kind of like high level, hey, what's going on with LeMay talk that might have happened months ago, there's not been anything really specific there. I know the Manitoba Métis Federation has a strong interest in this area. So for sure, we're going to engage them as we go through this process. And like I said earlier, I went down the LeMay rabbit hole. We can say there were a lot of Métis people in St. Norbert at the time, and we can say that there was an orphanage and a cemetery there at the time. But I think that's all we can say conclusively. That said, the Manitoba Métis Federation, along with every other Manitoban, has an interest in our collective heritage, has an interest in public spaces. And so certainly I welcome them and, all Manitobans to work with us on creating what we say will be a new provincial park that everyone can enjoy.
On the Manitoba Hydro and also LeMay Forest.
OK. Alors, illuminer le nord et l'ouest du Canada avec de l'énergie propre, c'est une idée très excitante en tant que la province du Manitoba, mais en même temps, c'est un investissement dans la souveraineté du Manitoba. Dans l'enjeu avec LeMay, nous lançons un processus pour créer un nouvel parc provincial à LeMay. Il y a beaucoup d'enjeux là qu'on voit qui sont dans l'intérêt des Manitobains et Manitobaines. Alors, pour sauvegarder ces intérêts, le gouvernement du Manitoba prend de l'action aujourd'hui. Merci beaucoup. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.